it's been 30 years since Islands in the Stream was a hit.
For 40 years, Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers shared something the world could not quite name. They sang together. They flirted on stage. They looked at each other in ways that made people whisper. But in 2025, at age 79, Dolly finally broke her silence. She revealed a hidden tattoo Kenny carried for decades with one word that changed everything. She talked about late-night studio sessions that almost went too far. She admitted feeling stares that terrified her, and she explained why crossing one line would have destroyed them both. This is the truth about a love that never happened. Dolly Parton entered this world on January 19, 1946, in a tiny one-room cabin in Locust Ridge, Tennessee. She was the fourth of 12 children, so space was always tight, and comfort was something they only heard others talk about. There was no electricity, no plumbing. The family relied on cornmeal and whatever wild animals her father could hunt. Money was so scarce that when Dolly was born, her father paid the doctor with a sack of cornmeal. The cabin walls were thin, but love filled the place anyway. Her mother, Avie Lee, stitched dresses from feed sacks and spun stories that made the children forget how empty their stomachs felt. They slept in shared beds. They shared everything. Dolly always said they were poor in every way, except the ones that truly matter. Her grandfather, Jake Owens, was a Pentecostal preacher, and he noticed early that Dolly carried music inside her. At 6 years old, she stood in church wearing patched hand-me-down clothes, singing "Jesus Loves Me" in front of neighbors and relatives who all watched her closely. She shook with stage fright, but each Sunday she returned to that spot. The church did not allow instruments, yet at night Dolly's father would quietly play his fiddle, letting music slip into their lives like a secret promise. These were the first moments that showed her what performing felt like: hard, scary, beautiful. Not long after, when Dolly was 7, her uncle gave her a homemade guitar built from a shipping crate lid. It only had a few chords to offer, but those chords opened a new world. She sat barefoot on the porch while her siblings hunted squirrels for dinner. She played until her fingers hurt, turning hunger into sound and dreams. By age 10, she found herself on the radio, performing for local audiences who began to notice the little girl with a big voice. School brought its own challenges. Dolly wore dresses made from flour sacks because that was all her family could afford. Kids pointed and called her Sack Girl. The teasing stung, but instead of breaking her, it stirred her creativity. She began writing songs to handle the hurt. Her first one was called Doggy, inspired by a neighbor's pet. Later, she turned those tough days into Coat of Many Colors, a reminder that love could turn scraps into something precious. Music kept making her stronger. Her childhood was a mix of strict religion and quiet rebellion. The church said no instruments. The mountains said yes to music. Dolly listened to the mountains. Her father's late-night fiddle, the hymns in church, the wind through the trees, all of it became part of her voice. Even hunger shaped her sound, giving every note a little more feeling because she knew what it meant to go without. By the time she reached 10 years old in 1956, she had won a talent prize from Easter Seals. And with that little bit of money, she bought her first real guitar. Soon she was performing every week on WIVK Radio's Cass Walker Show, singing "Letter to Heaven," and earning just enough gas money to get her there and back. Those shows taught her what it felt like to chase her own dream. When she turned 11, television came calling. She sang Puppy Love on WBIR-TV, eyes shining with both fear and excitement. The song was later recorded and released in 1959, marking her first step into the world of professional music. The record did not travel far, only about 1,000 copies sold, but it planted her name into the hearts of listeners who soon called her Little Miss Hillbilly. Then came June 1st, 1964. The day after high school graduation, Dolly climbed into her Uncle Bill Owens's pickup truck with only $23 and a cardboard suitcase stuffed with dirty laundry. Nashville waited for her. She slept in the truck her first night in the city, parked near Tootsie's Orchid Lounge. The next morning, she dragged her clothes into the wishy-washy laundromat, and that was where she saw Carl Dean for the first time. She had not even been in town a full day, yet she had already met the man she would one day marry. The road ahead was tougher than she imagined. Record labels said her voice was too raw, too mountain, too hillbilly. Nobody wanted that sound. Still, in 1966, she finally caught a break as a songwriter. The song Put It Off Until Tomorrow reached number 6 on the country charts. She learned that even if they would not let her sing, she could still make music speak. In 1967, Porter Wagoner invited her to join his show. He promised a salary and national exposure, and for a girl who had been rejected so often, it felt like a lifeline. But the partnership came with strings that pulled tight. Porter chose the gowns she had to wear and insisted on towering heels and heavy makeup. She borrowed money for costumes. She smiled when the cameras rolled. And she watched as Porter claimed credit for songs she wrote. Their voices blended beautifully on stage. But behind the curtain, frustration grew. Still, Dolly kept writing. In 1968, she released Just Because I'm a Woman, daring to challenge society's rules for women. Her honesty shocked some listeners, but others saw courage and truth. By 1970, her talent earned a CMA award. Porter whispered to the press that he made her. Those words cut deep. She realized then that if she stayed, her voice would always belong to someone else. So she went home and sat at her kitchen table, crying while writing her goodbye. I Will Always Love You was her farewell. It became her first #1 solo hit in 1974. Elvis Presley wanted to record it, but his manager asked for half the publishing rights. Dolly refused. She kept her song. Years later, when Whitney Houston's version brought it back to the world, that decision changed Dolly's life forever. Her success kept growing. Love Is Like a Butterfly fluttered up the charts. 9 to 5 came from tapping her acrylic nails together like a typewriter, turning the sound of work into a song that topped the pop charts in 1981. Movies, Grammys, national stardom. All of it rising from hunger, handmade guitars, and flower sack dresses. By 1980, after filming the movie 9 to 5, all that strain finally showed itself in public. During a performance in Indianapolis, she collapsed on stage. Fans had come to see a superstar. Instead, they saw her fall. Later, she admitted she felt like a pile of personal and emotional problems, with bad food habits, constant travel, and too much stress tearing her down from the inside. Then, in 1982, she went through a partial hysterectomy. The surgery solved one problem, but opened another. She slipped into depression, gained weight, and felt her body changing. She said in interviews that she was fighting female health issues and family stresses at the same time, and that she felt utterly defeated. During that same period, she quietly thought about ending it all, and later admitted that she had even found herself eyeing her gun before she pulled herself back from that edge. While her private life was breaking, her professional life shot to a new level. 9 to 5 came out in 1980 and went on to earn about $103 million worldwide. The movie was a huge hit and pushed Dolly from country star into major film actress. Still, the set was not always friendly. Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin were known for serious political views and a strong feminist image. They did not always understand Dolly's big hair and flashy clothes, and at times saw her as too bubbly and not serious enough. Dolly was nervous about acting and tried to cover that by preparing more than anyone. She memorized not only her own lines, but everyone else's. She sat on set clicking her fingernails together to sound like a typewriter, and that simple sound helped spark the idea for the song 9 to 5. During a pillow fight scene that almost died on camera, she threw in the word "sugar time" on the spot and turned a flat moment into something people remembered. The film's success brought her an Oscar nomination for the song and 2 Grammy Awards. But behind those trophies, she often felt alone and judged. The early 80s only got heavier. In 1982, she slipped into a secret emotional affair with a close friend of her husband, Carl Dean. That relationship did not just bruise her marriage. It knocked her into a 2-year depression. She gained about 65 pounds. She canceled around 50 shows. On top of that, she received death threats and found herself in the middle of a family conservatorship fight, as some relatives tried to gain control over her affairs. Her body reacted to all of it. She ended up in the hospital with abdominal bleeding and went through that partial hysterectomy during this same stretch. Later, she admitted she had considered suicide and said again that she had found herself eyeing her gun, but that her faith and the people who loved her pulled her back. Those years left scars, and she never forgot how close she came to losing everything. Even when she seemed strong again, the pressure never really left. By the time she filmed Steel Magnolias in 1989, she was reshaping herself yet again for a role. To play the upbeat beauty shop owner Truvy, she dropped about 40 pounds using a near-starvation diet and squeezed her waist into a cincher as small as 16 inches. Every day on set, she covered her tattoos, including a rooster from Carl and the word Jesus on her ankle, under thick makeup so the camera would never see them. Director Herbert Ross could be sharp with his words and once snapped at her over a bad take. She answered him with a line that later became famous. He asked if she could act, and she told him, "No, but it is your job to make me look like I can." The film turned into a classic that people still watch, but she later said she felt lonely during filming and battled the constant pressure to look perfect in a way that went far beyond her early country image. Even in the middle of that pain, she never stopped building. For almost 10 years, she went back and forth with Emmylou Harris and Linda Ronstadt, trying to finish a trio record. 3 powerful women, 3 strong visions, and 3 busy careers made the project hard. Labels dragged their feet, schedules clashed. At times, old ego wounds rose up. Harris felt unsure about working with Dolly. Ronstadt's label was not excited. The whole idea kept slipping away. At one point, things were so bad, Dolly stayed up all night and rewrote around 20 tracks in a single stretch, just so they would have something they could all stand behind. When the trio album finally arrived in 1987, it sold more than 4 million copies and won the Grammy for Best Country Performance by a duo or group. People heard 3 angelic voices blended together. They did not see how close the album came to dying on the studio floor. The same drive showed up when she turned home into business. In 1986, she partnered to turn the Silver Dollar City theme park in Pigeon Forge into Dollywood. Admission that first year cost around $1, and the park drew about 1.3 million visitors. It quickly became the top attraction in Tennessee and the center of a whole new economy in East Tennessee. She used the success to pour money into a different dream. Out of Dollywood's profits came the Imagination Library. It began as a way to gift books to kids in her home region and later grew across the country and beyond. By 2025, the program had given away more than 100 million books to children from birth to kindergarten no matter how much money their families had. Studies showed that kids in the program were more likely to start school ready to learn and more likely to feel good about reading. What started as a small hometown idea turned into a huge literacy movement. Her business world kept growing along with it. From 1986 onward, she turned Dollywood into the heart of a wide empire in East Tennessee. Over the years, the park expanded to include the Dream More Resort, the Splash Country Water Park, and Dolly Parton's Stampede Dinner Show. By the middle of the 2020s, her ventures had created more than 4,000 jobs and brought hundreds of millions of dollars into the region. In October 2025, she announced 2 new projects in Nashville, the Songteller Hotel and Dolly's Life of Many Colors Museum, set to open in June 2026. Tickets for the opening days sold out within days. She had gone from a poor girl in Sevier County to one of the most successful celebrity entrepreneurs on earth, and she had done it while still writing songs. Awards followed her at every stage. By 2011, she had won 11 Grammy Awards and earned around 54 nominations, one of the highest counts for any woman in music. Yet she never chased every honor placed in front of her. In 2003, she famously turned down the Kennedy Center honors. She said the event felt too stuffy and that she would rather stay in her rhinestone gowns than sit in a formal box. She joked that it sounded a bit like going to church when she would rather be singing in a honky-tonk. That refusal made people talk, but it also reminded the world that she valued comfort in her own skin more than elite approval. She also surprised people by the way she circled back to her roots. In 1999, she released a bluegrass album called The Grass is Blue. She recorded it in a single weekend in a cabin in Locust Ridge, Tennessee, working with players such as Alison Krauss, Jerry Douglas, and Rhonda Vincent. The record won the Grammy for Best Bluegrass Album, and critics pointed out that her voice matched the speed and energy of the finest bluegrass pickers. She summed up the move with one sharp line. She said she had to get rich so she could sing as if she were poor. The album included a fast bluegrass version of Billy Joel's song Travelin' Prayer and helped bring new ears to the bluegrass world. By 2020, her total record sales had passed 100 million worldwide, putting her among the best-selling artists in history. In 2006, she finally did accept the Kennedy Center honors. During the ceremony, she kept her humor, telling the crowd, "Y'all look like my tax audit committee." That night, the tribute ran through her music, her charity work, and her business world, and firmly placed her among the giants of American culture. Even as the world changed around her, she kept finding ways to serve others. In 2020, during the global spread of COVID-19, she gave $1 million to support research for the Moderna vaccine. She had written a song around that time called "When Life Gets Good Again," a simple message of hope that people began to play during the hardest days. Many started calling the shot Dolly's Jab, and clinics across the United States used the song as a comfort during vaccination drives. Her gift helped speed the vaccine's development, and her public support made nervous people feel braver about taking it. Then, instead of slowing down, she stepped into a new sound. In 2023, at the age of 77, she released a rock record called Rockstar. The album entered the Billboard 200 chart at number 3, one of the highest positions of her entire career. It paired her with rock names such as Kid Rock, even though their views on life and politics were far apart. When asked about it, she simply said she sings with sinners too. The record included her own versions of songs by Queen, Metallica, and the Rolling Stones, and showed again that she was not afraid to cross into new territory. For someone with decades in country music behind her, it was proof that age did not place a fence around her creativity. All this public strength sat beside a private story that fans never fully understood until much later. The story of Dolly and Kenny Rogers. When they first came together to record Islands in the Stream in 1983, the air in the studio felt charged from the moment they met. Kenny had already spent hours arguing with producer Barry Gibb, pushing for more solo lines, raising his voice, trying to shape the song his way. Dolly sat nearby, quiet, smoking, watching the tension but not stepping into it. Some label executives worried the entire duet might fall apart before it even started. During breaks, the two stars barely spoke. They shared quick, sharp glances instead of easy small talk. Then, Dolly finally joined Kenny inside the vocal booth, and something shifted. Their voices wrapped around each other in a way that turned a troubled session into a hit. Islands in the Stream climbed to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 by August 1983 and bumped Bonnie Tyler's Total Eclipse of the Heart from the top spot. The single sold more than 2 million physical copies, and by January 2019 had added about 834,000 digital sales. As the years passed, their chemistry became the subject of endless questions and rumors. Kenny later told Dan Rather in an interview that the tension between them was better than an affair. He laughed and said Dolly always said no, even though both of them were married. He called what they had a 30-year flirtation and explained that if they had crossed the line, they would have ruined the magic that people saw on stage. Dolly agreed. She said their chemistry was something special, but crossing that line would have been a mistake. They kept their bond playful and respectful. Through 5 of Kenny's divorces and 5 joint #1 hits, including You Cannot Make Old Friends, they held on to a relationship that ran on teasing and trust rather than romance. That song about lifelong friendship was written with their own story in mind. In the studio, she sometimes felt the pull more clearly than anywhere else. During the Real Love sessions in 1984, she found herself staring at Kenny's hands as he moved between guitar and piano. Later, she called them creative genius hands and admitted she felt a quiet attraction growing under the surface. Still, she promised herself she would not act on it. Their friendship was too precious. The studio could feel charged and intense, but both of them treated that energy as something to be steered into the music rather than into a secret affair. As their songs kept climbing the charts, the public imagined their own story. Once Islands in the Stream passed 500 million streams, fan talk about a hidden romance exploded. Tabloids printed stories about late-night writing sessions and private meetings. Social media spun its own tales. Dolly smiled through it and usually brushed questions away with the same line. She said they were just good friends. Behind the scenes, they sometimes did work until 3 in the morning, trading ideas and harmonies, but they kept the boundary intact. The rumors never stopped, yet the bond they protected stayed stronger than all that noise. Not everything between them was smooth. In the early 2000s, after their 2000 tour, they drifted into a real break. Kenny's chronic knee pain slowed rehearsals, and changes he wanted for their set list created friction. Dolly had always been strict about timing, performance quality, and control over her own image. The clash over pace and creative choices left both of them hurt. For years, they barely spoke. Fans noticed that they stopped showing up at each other's events and interviews. For about 17 years, silence and confusion filled the space that had once been full of duets and shared jokes. Then, in 2017, they finally sat down together again for a joint interview. They admitted that they had both been wounded by the past, but had never truly hated each other. That talk became a turning point and felt to many people like the healing of a deep cut in country music history. That same year brought one of their most powerful public moments. At the 2017 CMA Awards, Kenny, then 79, walked the red carpet leaning on Dolly's arm. Cameras caught Dolly whispering that they would go out as rock stars, hinting at the farewell that was coming. A few weeks later, on October 25, 2017, they shared the stage for his farewell concert, All In for the Gambler, at Bridgestone Arena in Nashville. The show sold out quickly, and some tickets went for as much as $29 to $95. The event earned more than $20 million and stood as one of the most lucrative farewell shows in country music. On that stage, they shared songs, stories, and memories. It was more than a concert. It felt like their official closing chapter together in front of the world. Then came the final call. On March 20th, 2020, at the age of 81, Kenny Rogers died. Just hours before he passed, he spoke with Dolly one last time. During that conversation, he apologized for pushing too hard during the rewrites of Islands in the Stream all those years earlier. Dolly listened, then sang I Will Always Love You to him over the phone without any instruments, just her voice. Friends and family later confirmed that moment, and suddenly the song she had written in 1973 and made famous again through Whitney Houston's version carried another layer of meaning. His apology and her simple song turned into their last shared act. After his death, she honored him again in front of others. At a tribute concert, she stood alone and sang Islands in the Stream without him, yet said she could feel his presence. She explained later that she had sensed his pain in his later years, but often chose not to push him about it, respecting both his pride and his need for privacy. When she sang their songs after he was gone, she felt as if something in the room shifted, as if he were standing just outside the edge of the stage. The concert sold out. Fans told stories about how Dolly and Kenny's music had walked with them through marriages, breakups, and losses. Her choice to honor him this way showed again how deep that bond ran. Then, even years later, new pieces of their story kept surfacing. In 2025, the public learned that Kenny had a hidden tattoo of a rooster that he had gotten in the 1980s to honor his nickname, the Gambler. Next to the rooster sat a single word, soulmate. The tattoo was not meant to be romantic, but it was tied to his feelings about Dolly. He saw her as his musical soulmate. When this detail came out, fans were stunned. It renewed talk about what they might have been to each other, but it also underlined how seriously he took their connection. Around that same time, Dolly herself finally spoke in full. At age 79, during a 2025 interview at her home in Tennessee, she shared what she called the ultimate truth about their relationship. She said she had loved Kenny deeply, but not as a romantic partner. She explained that they were soulmates who chose friendship over what she described as 5 possible divorces. Both of them had seen the damage failed marriages could bring and decided not to risk what they had. She remembered their first meeting back in 1983 and how the instant chemistry had made people assume there was more going on. She told the interviewer that they flirted constantly but kept it playful. If they had acted on their attraction, she believed they would not have remained friends for over 40 years. Kenny had said the same in his own words, calling their connection a 30-year flirtation that only worked because they never took it further. In that same 2025 talk, she went even deeper. She admitted that she often felt what she called different stares from him. She saw admiration in his eyes, not only for her talent, but also for her as a woman. She also felt a quiet warning inside her that one night together could destroy 4 decades of trust. Kenny agreed in his own interviews and said the risk was too high, that they both had too much to lose. Their teasing on stage, their little jokes in interviews, and the light touch in their songs were their way of keeping a very real pull under control. They built their bond on respect, and shared work instead of passion. And that choice became the hidden framework for everything they did together.